Mulweni Bakaya. I hope that you are well on this hump day, Wednesday. I hope that you have been productive, that you've done the things that you set yourself out to do for this week, that you are celebrating those little achievements. You know, it's one of the things that a lot of people don't do when they're going about their work and their day-to-day things. They never take the time at the end of the day to celebrate the fact that despite all of their feelings, despite the state of Komani, the potholes, despite the long queues at home affairs, despite the fact that the pollution is really unbearable, despite the fact that we don't have a clear vision of hope, something that we can all work towards, despite all of those things, and my individual capacity and my desired outcomes for my life and the experience I want to have on the 23rd of September 2023, I wish people would take the time, I wish you would take the time every day to acknowledge the fact that life isn't easy and to give yourself a pat on the back just for making it through the day sometimes. So yeah, if you can take one thing from today, and I'm hoping that you're going to get a lot of value out of this next episode. But if there's one thing that you can take out today, it's that life isn't easy. I know, you know. And the fact that every day you wake up and you try a little bit and you try a little bit and you do what you can, sometimes is enough to take you from one day to the next until that day where you have your moment of clarity, where your purpose, your divine inheritance, your cosmic responsibility becomes clear to you. Celebrate the journey towards that day, because it's going to happen. It's the journey that every human being has to take to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, because we never really know what tomorrow is going to bring. So if I equip myself today, if I do at least one thing from the things that I wanted to do, if I can do all the things that I wanted to do, then I'm equipping myself to be able to handle whatever comes to me in the future. And, you know, when I think about a good example of that, whenever you're watching a sports event, whether it be golf, whether it be tennis, whether it be netball, whether it be cricket or rugby or football or soccer, whatever, basketball, just watch the interaction between the players. Every single thing they do, they acknowledge. It's a high five. If you didn't do something well, it's a pat on the backside. It's don't worry about it. Fix it on the next one. Come harder. You know, so there's that continuous celebration, that continuous affirmation, because life isn't easy. And we all know that there are those times when we're tired of fighting, when we're tired of having to explain ourselves, when we're tired of having to prove that we are of value, and you just want to crawl under the blankets and shut it down for a while, you know. It's one of my stress mechanisms. When I find myself in a position where my thoughts are overwhelming me, I sleep. And my partner gets annoyed when she has spells of insomnia, because I can literally fall asleep like that. So it annoys her to no end when she can't sleep or she has to work and I'm sleeping, and I'll wake up to wake her up, and then I'll go right back to sleep. So that's a fun little skill that I've developed. And now I've lost my train of thought. This is awkward. Anyway, sleeping, stress mechanism, I'm back, thank you. Yeah, I just sleep. And I sleep because I know that when my conscious mind is not interfering, my unconscious mechanisms are going to sort through all of the information that's overwhelming me, and I'm going to get the wisdom I need to take the next step. Whether it's apologizing because I procrastinated and I didn't show up on time, whether it's because I didn't meet a commitment, whether it's because I've got a pending deal and I don't know if it's going to go through, and I'm nitpicking through all the things I said to see what I could have done that would jeopardize the deal being signed, and that anxiety creating thought pattern. I don't have to go through that. I just sleep. And then when I wake up, whatever comes to me, whatever, this is the reason, this is what you did, this is what you didn't do, and this is what you have to do to get out of it. And then I do that thing. But it is critical and important that I celebrate when those moments of turnaround happen. It's important that I own up to my mistakes, because then at least I can salvage the relationship with the person. And that kind of, I feel like I owe somebody something. The energy I get from that, because I don't like owing people things. I want to live with freedom. Nobody must look at me and be like, you did this to me, or you owe me that, you said you did. And I remember all the things and commitments that I've made and the people that I owe. And I have every intention to pay them off in whatever shape, form it needs to be. So, because I keep a record of my debts, because I keep a record of my debts, my debt to society, my debt to my community, my debt to my family, my dad, who's done so much for me, my sister who's always been there for me, my partner who over the last 5 years, has gone to the darkest corners of my soul with me and come back, and it's those kind of things that give me the energy to be like, all right, you slept, you thought about it, this is what's in front of you, what are you going to do? So in order for me to be able to keep coming back and punching and fighting, and eventually winning and becoming the kind of person that I want to be for myself, for my father, for my sister, for my nieces, for my partner, my daughter, it's important to be grateful. To be grateful to my ancestors for surviving. I think about the Xhosas who fought the British for 100 years, and that's something that we don't talk about. The kind of resilience that it takes to withstand that kind of an onslaught from the power of guns with knopkeries and spears. We don't talk about the hundreds of thousands of livestock that was burnt, hoping that when our wealth was gone, the Europeans would leave, and that didn't happen. I think about my grandfather, who is a European descendant, and yeah, my father has this one story that he always tells, when it comes to revenge and harboring resentment. My grandfather being white, a farmer, just outside of Komani here, apartheid times. He has 2 children with an African woman, my grandmother, and everybody knows that these are his children, but nobody can acknowledge that fact, even though they do. But as soon as it becomes an official thing, then the police must intervene. So nobody says anything, but everybody knows. That kind of hostility in everybody involved in my father, my grandfather, grandmother, my grandfather employing the people from the villages, and sometimes they would, borrow money from my grandfather. They'd go, they'd get drunk, and they'd come back and they would swear at him, and they would spit out all of the venom of the resentment and the hate of the apartheid system at my grandfather. And my dad, as he tells the story, says he's laying there or sitting there next to my grandfather, and he's cooking, because this is his father and he loves him. And what right do these people who are also family to him, some of them, have to speak to him in that way when he's doing everything he's doing for them? And so when the people are done saying what they've said, and they vented and they leave, and my dad would turn to his father and say, listen, what are you doing? Why would you not say anything? Why don't you? And my grandfather would look at his body and say, do you see any bruises on my body? Are there any broken bones in my body? These people are suffering under a system that is represented by people who look like me, and this is one place where they can actually say it without the consequences of what that would look like if it was out in the streets. So let them vent. So the history of South Africa, the history of colonialism, the history of apartheid is very personal to me and my family. And Komani is the stage in which I grew up. These are the realities that I existed in. I grew up in Victoria Park, which was designated as a colored neighborhood. And we could live there, even though the state knows that, or at least the people here know, that my father isn't technically colored, but because of the arbitrary nature of it, we were able to move into that space, which had better amenities than the locations for African people. So naturally, my father, wanting to give his children the best, took that as an option. The importance of celebrating, for me, is honoring my dad. It's honoring my ancestors. It's honoring the struggle. That even though apartheid was gone by the time I was conscious enough to reason and understand, the consequences of it to this day are still evident in every part of my interaction with the people of Komani, of Eastern Cape, of South Africa, of Africa. And this conversation, I suppose, is very much in line with today's topic of strategy. We've spoken about well-formed outcomes, which I said was the nice part, because you get to dream. You get to imagine a life that would make you happy and fulfilled. Strategy is, in my experience, the most difficult part of realizing and actualizing your dreams. And the fundamental question that strategy boils down to is value proposition. What is the value that I am offering the people of Komani to disrupt their lives with this festival? Because if I'm creating an event where 26,000 people are going to gather to come and celebrate Heritage Day and the heritage of the Xhosa people, which are the majority of the people in Komani and the Eastern Cape, and then the African people, which is the European descendants, those of us with mixed heritage, and so on and so forth. And then it is in that African category, for me, is foreign nationals, everybody from the African continent. That includes those in the diaspora. When I think about my identity as an African, having to wage through my identity crisis of having European descent and African descent in this political dispensation with the energies and attitudes that we have racially, particularly in the 90s when I was growing up and I was forming my identity. I used to have debates with my dad and my sister as a teenager about being black. And I was like, you can't say I'm black. I refuse to be black. I refuse to be colored. Because it doesn't say anything about my heritage. I didn't articulate it as well then, but I knew in principle that I can't take either side. And even with the Europeans, the whites, the so-called whites, I can't fight there either because the blood courses in my veins. My grandfather, my great-grandfather, who was it? My great-great-grandfather immigrated. My great-grandfather was already born in the UK, and then they came over to SA. And so they were obviously a part of the European civilization expanding into South Africa. Whether they were just coming for a better life because life wasn't great that side, whether they came as a machinery of disrupting the life of Africans here, it doesn't matter really. They were a part of that machinery, and our political, racially classified political discourses, my identity gets muddled in the waters. And so I had to fight for my identity. And so for me to confidently say I am an African man comes from a place where I've dug through my history, I've dug through myself, my attitudes towards other races, and I've come to the conclusion that there's a common humanity, Ubuntu. And yes, there is a debt owed, there is an injustice that European descendants, wherever in the world they are, owe to the rest of the people in the world, including Africa. And until European descendants are willing to deconstruct the European civilization, which is to say, to pull out the military bases in other sovereign states, which is to give back all of the artifacts and jewels that are sitting in your museums and in your vaults. It is sharing your technology with the people of the world so that we can really create a human civilization. My building an African civilization is only a precursor to building a human civilization, because then as a collective human collective consciousness, we can then start exploring the universe, which has infinite resources, so that capitalists can continue to play. But let's just take care of the lowest common denominator. Let's make sure everybody has a dignified living state. And so that's the motivation for me. That's my why when I plan this Komani Heritage Festival. I've itemized all of the things that I wanted to do. When it comes to strategy, we've got to start with why, and that's my why. I want to realize and actualize what Kwame Nkrumah advocated for, what he lived and died for, what Muammar Gaddafi lived and died for, and what countless other Africans have lived and died for. Those are the people I take my cues from. Those are the people who educate me politically. Those are the people who give me the right to say the things I'm saying. These are my teachers. This is my school. This is my authority. These are the people who've shown that not only do we have the intellectual capacity to be able to run this race with the Europeans, but we've got something else that we've never lost. We've still got Ubuntu. We're still connected to the Garden of Eden, the cradle of humankind. The soles of our feet have never disconnected from the land. Whereas the rest of the people of the world have scattered and explored and have shifted their energy bases, here in Africa, we're still in tune with the course that has always been from the first people. And those are things that the likes of Sheikh Anta Diop, who was the father of the African Renaissance as a concept, as an ideal, as a strategy for African self-determination. So the value for me of the Komani Heritage Festival is that it gives us something to do over the next 11 months and change. Everybody in Komani, whether you cook, whether you don't have a job, whether you are an architect or an attorney, a structural engineer. There's a lot of every skill that exists in the market is going to be needed for this festival to be able to give the kind of value that honors everything I've said about Africa and about the world and the human civilization. So with that as my why, when I think about who the critical role players and stakeholders are, who stands to benefit the most from the festival, firstly it's the community, but I can't speak to the community as a single entity at the moment because Komani doesn't have the civic structures to be able to give me that, and it's part of the reason why the feedback that we got from the end of the time frame I'd set for Clean Komani round 1 didn't work out, was primarily because of communication. There's no way for the mayor to speak and say something and for us to be certain that every person in Komani has access to the things that he has said, which means that there cannot be coordination in Komani. So I can't speak to the community just yet. And if I have to wait to be able to do that on my own first, I'm going to have a big problem. So the community isn't my first point of call. Where do I go? My first point of call is the mayor. As the figurehead, face, body, voice of Komani as a single community, the mayor's office is the first point of call. Now I have to demonstrate to the mayor's office what value this festival has. I did just a calculation on tickets. So I said 26,000 people, right? A ticket is 1,500 Rand. It's a 3-day festival. That's a very, very reasonable price. 26,000 people at 1,500 Rand, I think is 36 or 38 million Rand. That's just tickets. That's not talking about sponsorship. That's not talking about vending. That's not talking about the traffic that organizing the event is going to create leading up to it. That's talking about the coordination or the relationship between state organs and civic organizations in the community at large, employment that's going to be created, and the value is pretty evident. Why do I believe I can do it and get it right? Well, firstly, I've had 3 years experience working for Varsity Sports as a project manager. Started as an assistant project manager, eventually went to project manager. I was working as a relationship manager for all of the stakeholders of my designated projects. The one that is most applicable to this event itself is the varsity basketball competition. That was my operational relationship building off of the framework of Varsity Sports. Varsity Sports has a model of their competitions, and I was responsible for connecting all of the stakeholders to create the varsity basketball competition. So it didn't exist. Cameron, there you go. There's your template. Here are the resources. Make it happen. Very successful competition. NBA Africa had a very big interest in varsity basketball, and I'm still regretful that I wasn't able to create a marriage between those two, because I really want varsity basketball to be in every country on the continent where basketball is played in universities. That would be fantastic for me. It would be fantastic for varsity sports. It would be fantastic for university sports in South Africa, and it would be fantastic for our relationships with the rest of the continent, and hopefully give us a different perspective on this conversation around paras and illegal foreign immigrants and so on and so forth. So when I think about the festival, the value for me that it adds, plus my experience in organizing events, there is no reason why I can't do this. And then on top of that, I've also got the networks of all of the institutions I worked with when I was at Varsity Sports, from manufacturers to design companies, all of the skills that are needed for the event without even tapping into the resources in Komani. I already have access to the people that I've worked with already. So the possibility, the practicality, the benefits of it are fantastic. And that's then the approach that I am going to be taking with the mayor, to be like, well, this is the event that I'm creating and organizing. This is the financial upside. This is the employment upside. And then on top of that, because I'm not a capitalist, the company that owns the Komani Heritage Festival, I want to be owned by every member of the Komani community. So every person has a single share. Before you can exercise your rights as a shareholder, you must first demonstrate that you understand the rights and responsibilities of a shareholder. And so that creates a learning environment where I'm giving value in exchange for a behavior, knowing that once they've gone through that process of understanding the rights and responsibilities of a shareholder, they have to understand principles of income and expenditure. They have to understand principles of capitalization as opposed to paying out dividends. They have to understand capital contributions. They have to understand the value of time, which in Komani is a big problem. People don't stick to time here, and it makes it difficult to honor your commitments, because I came here, I set up my schedule, I make appointments with people, and then I never get to the places, or I have to leave the meeting halfway. So time is a very big thing, and I can teach, and not just personally, but with other stakeholders, every member of the Komani community, the principles of being a shareholder, and then we can all own this festival together. That's the actual value that I want this festival to have. That's the legacy. I want every member of the Komani community, no matter your color of your skin, no matter your heritage, no matter what. I want everybody to have equity in this event. That allows us as citizens, without talking about structures, just as citizens within a private company, we're then compelled to come sit in annual general meetings. We're compelled to read the newsletters from the company and the organization, because it's talking about your equity, your money, your land, your event. So in that way, I'm not building the festival. We're building the festival. And like I said, that model for the Komani Heritage Fest, I want to apply for the International Festival in December, which for me is about all of the African descendants everywhere in the world. And in order for me to be able to go to the African Union in November, when I'm going to be in Addis Ababa, the door is going to be a lot easier to open if I have an endorsement from the mayor of Komani. And then I've got to look at every other stakeholder who stands to benefit from the festival. Those who have resources specifically, so that we can do the early work to be able to put the communication structures in place, to be able to get the public participation from our communities, to be able to hand over the share certificates, to be able to put the structures in place to comply with publicly traded companies, even if it's not on the JSE. I'd like to adhere to those principles of the JSE in that specific company, because the laws that apply to publicly traded companies is in the public interest. And so we'd put the structures in place for that as well. But my departure point would be the mayor's office, and then from there it would be the Chamber of Commerce. And then in that way, we'd be able to take the private sector benefits and contributions with the state, and then the community, who are the employees of both of these, or the beneficiaries from the schools and all of the things that everybody is contributing to our community. And then have this exact same conversation and explain the value proposition for every individual, for every organization, for every instrument of state and our communities, the farmers, the people in the villages around Komani. Like I said, the Komani Heritage Festival will be Komani Central, but the African Renaissance Community, the Ark Pilgrimage Festival, will be in Gwabandu, which is Komani to Dordrecht. And the reason for that, once again, I'm going to keep saying it, is because my ancestors, my family, are halfway between the two, and here and other places. But just as a departure point, that's the area I'm looking at. So when the mayor agrees, there's going to be a lot of jobs created in Komani. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for volunteering. The volunteering will always come with a skills exchange, and then, hopefully within the work we're doing, we'll be able to get enough support from the smaller businesses to the medium-sized businesses, and food parcels for volunteers and that kind of thing. Yesterday's conversations at the Expanded Public Works Program. Please go have a look at the website. It's the epwp.gov.za. Please go have a look at it. Please comment on that, because it does affect the lives of the most vulnerable people in our communities. And your solutions, your perspectives from a corporate perspective or an education perspective, or an entertainment perspective, could be very valuable, and you might be able to find places where you can contribute value and transact with the state. So please do go have a look at that. Like I said, for me, my why is I like living in conditions where Ubuntu is evident. I've had that in high concentration in the schools I've been in the rugby teams I've played on, and even from my birth. There were always people in and out of my home, sleeping over for months on end, very close-knit, very chaotic, very beautiful, everything on the surface. And it's a part of the reason why I am as confident as I am, is because I've been bullied in my own home with love to make me stronger. I've been coddled and spoiled because my dad recognizes the trauma that we've experienced. He's done a fantastic job at loving us and taking care of us. A shout out to all of the fathers who are doing the most, those who are still struggling to find a reason to reconnect with your sons and daughters. Think about those who made you, and think about the kind of legacy you'd like to attach to your name, their name that they gave to you. I'm very, very excited about the work that I'm doing. I really hope that you are excited about the work that you are doing. I hope that these conversations will inspire you to have courage to go out and have the conversations with the people that you think can help you. The mayor's office is something that I'm building courage for, and I'm collecting my thoughts, and I'm packaging my value proposition, because I've made a noise in Komani since I've arrived. And I know that it has reached the halls of our municipal offices. And I hope that I haven't offended anybody. It wasn't my intention. I just didn't want to start with businesses and with our government in taking on the Clean Komani campaign, because I feel like our people are not doing enough constructive, proactive work to be able to help government and business build an economy that is inclusive. I also feel like businesses and government need to share equity and resources with our communities. And the EPWP, I think, is a fantastic platform and a vehicle to actually be able to do that. I think with the mayor's office, that's the other office that I will approach and pitch to. Because the conversations I had yesterday, once again, Kismic, finding myself in the right places. Thank you to Councillor Aloysius Alexander. He's been putting me onto all of the municipality meetings because I have an interest. We talk a lot about how sad it is that people aren't participating enough. We don't have enough active citizens. So him and I are having conversations about his work and ambitions as a politician. And I'm hoping that the business community and the people who he's already working really well with in the structures of the municipalities, the Karisani, which is district, and the local municipalities. It's really nice to engage with our government and engage with humans and see that you're also experiencing the same frustrations as a citizen, but there's just certain conversations that people aren't wanting to have. They're not willing to listen to you. So I feel like communication is something that is very big, and it's something that the councillor and I are talking about, putting together some form of an intervention that will be able to benefit all of the people of Komani because we're able to speak to each other. So if anybody has any contacts or suggestions of models that do work as far as connecting communities, as far as communication, SMS, Mixit, WhatsApp, email, if there are any case studies that anybody is aware of that we can look at, I'd really appreciate that help. Other than that, strategy is value proposition. You take your SMART outcomes, your well-formed outcomes, you've itemized all the things, you've got your budget, you've got your time frames. Now you have to take action. Now you have to take action. I've got another meeting with the councillor this afternoon, so that's a part of the action I'm taking. And then once I understand better how to approach the mayor in the correct fashion, then that will be the next uncomfortable action, and that's what I'm building courage for, that's what I'm equipping myself for. And the confidence to do that I'm going to get from how confident I am in the value proposition that I've put together for the mayor. And then from there, every other stakeholder that I'm going to engage on this journey. Thank you again for your time. I do appreciate it. If you're still listening at this time, you're getting value. Please do engage in the conversation with me. Otherwise, I feel like I'm just here by myself, and that my family, who keep telling me they're proud of me, are saying it just because they love me and they know that nobody else is saying anything. Help me get this thing right, and come celebrate with us next year, the 22nd of September 2023, Komani Heritage Festival. Ami-Faku on the stage. I'm gonna actualize that one. Actually, I really wanna have Ami there. I saw her live once in Joburg. Mikasa had put her on, and I really enjoy her. From the first time I heard her, I like her story. I like her energy. I never met her. I didn't do any much deep research, but her energy for me is fantastic, and I love what she sings as well. So, Ami-Faku. That's on my list. That's the other thing that you can help me with. Who are the people that you would want to see at a festival? If you can share that with me, please, I'd really appreciate it. Which artists, music, whether it's writers, poets, painters, spoken word, whatever the case might be. It's a festival, it's a heritage festival. Xhosa people, please send through Xhosa artists. I'd like for us as Komani to demonstrate that. And then I know that the other cultural groups as well, us of mixed heritage, the European descendants, also have their own ways of celebrating their heritage. So please share your suggestions of what you would like to experience at the Komani Heritage Festival in September 2023. All right, I think that's enough today, 40 minutes. Thank you for listening.